Hello, 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 my design enthusiasts, and welcome to the one, the only, Level Design Lobby. Hey guys, you're joining me, the host with the most, traveling from coast to coast through your ears on this sweet podcast, Max Pears. So, thank you guys for joining me. Today is episode 3. Third time's the charm, as they say. So welcome to today's episode. This one's a good one. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be discussing about a certain book. If you remember from the first episode, I talked about how one of the things we were going to be chatting about in this podcast was reading material. Such material that I've found, that I've really enjoyed, that others have sent to me, so that we can help each other grow, really. You know, sharing material is always great. And this one is a book called How Games Move Us, Emotion by Design, written by the author called Catherine Isbister. I hope I've pronounced your name correct. I'm sorry if I haven't. So yeah, this one is a great book. I really enjoyed it. It's not too long as well, only about, I think it's 200 and so pages. Oh, not even that. It is only... well, it's under 200 pages. It's a fantastic read, and it's a really good light read for people. It discusses about games and the emotions in there, and how that we can reach certain emotions through our games, through our gameplay. And it brings up some great examples that I'd not heard of before, and different types of games other than just video games, which, again, is absolutely brilliant, broadening our horizon and just learning more. Because sometimes it's great to learn from other video games, but taking that outside influence is also a fantastic thing. So buckle up and get ready to hear about the book How Games Move Us, Emotion by Design. So before I get into the book and its chapters, what it's about, and giving you a brief summary, I want to talk about how I came across it first. So I was reading an article on the site Gamma Sutra. If you haven't been there before, I strongly recommend checking it out. It's one of the best resources for developers and a great community where loads of people share their ideas. But again, that'll be a topic for another time. So yeah, I was reading an article up online, and I came across this book because the author of the article had referenced this book and said how it inspired them to come up with their methods and change some of their perspectives. I can't remember the article or the author of the article. I know it wasn't Catherine, though. And then, yeah, I bought it. Yep, that's right. I just bought it. I know what you're thinking. Pretty entertaining story. Well, Max, why are you making a podcast on game and level design when clearly you're a master of storytelling? Psh, stop it, listeners. No, I'm deciding to put my storytelling career on pause for my level design career. Now let's get back to it. So I think the reason that I was really interested at the time was because I'd started to get into more about emotion in design, and how certain geometry can cause different emotion, and the emotion that we should focus on when we're trying to make our missions. Because at the end of the day, we are creating emotions in players, whether we mean to do it or not, or if it's by accident, we are still creating emotion within these players, which is amazing. And honestly, when you really think about what we do, that is one of the most fantastic things, is we get to reach these players in an emotional way, and not just in a non-engaging kind of way. We're engaging players on so many different levels, with challenging people through their minds, visually astonishing them, but also with emotions as well. And it's one of these key features and key things that we should try to tackle, and I believe do tackle to a certain extent with games. So yeah, then I got really into, I was really taken by the title, How Games Move Us. Now, when you normally talk about games and you talk about the emotion, it normally is through empowering the player, making them feel strong and untouchable in this godlike state as you mow down hundreds, if not thousands, of bad guys or women out there. So, moves us. That was the bit that really hooked me and really interested me, because the cover is that of the two travelers from Journey. And if you have not played Journey, I strongly recommend that you play this game. It is fantastic, and it is one of those games that moves us. This is something that I'm just so interested in. I read a load of Genova Chen's work, his articles on Flow. He was the creative director on Journey. And yeah, I thought this would just give me a great glossary to other games that move people, and also to understanding how to achieve these emotions through different gameplay and that. So that's how I came across it. Now I'm going to be breaking down the chapters. Also, did it teach me everything about moving the player in certain ways? I'm not going to do a page-by-page read or anything, or spoil too much, because I honestly believe it's worth a read. I'm actually just holding the book right now, having looked through it, and flicking through it again. Put that that down before you just hear me moving stuff on the mic. Yes, I'll be breaking it down and giving you a brief overview, what I liked, what I learned from it, and then that'll hopefully help you decide if it's something that you're interested in. Okay, so now we're going to get into the book. Ooh, just one thing before we get into the actual book is this is not a paid endorsement. I have never met the author. They have not paid me to promote this. Again, in this series of my podcast about reading material, it is just stuff that I find really interesting I want to share with you. Okay, back to the matter at hand. So the book is divided into 4 chapters. These chapters are a series of interesting choices, the building blocks of emotional design; social play, designing for multiplayer emotions; 3, bodies at play, using movement designed to create emotion and connection; and the final chapter, number 4, bridging distance to create intimacy and connection. And with that, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail of each of these chapters, saying things about the chapter, what I liked, and that. So let's get into a series of interesting choices, the building blocks of emotional design. So this chapter is actually named after a quote by Sid Meier's, the creator of Civilization, which goes, "A good game is a series of interesting choices." So I think that's a super, super brilliant line there, and a great quote by Sid Meier's. And that is a great way to sum up games. Now, I don't know if you can say that I don't know if that statement is true to say all games have interesting choices, but I definitely believe there's choices needed. So one of the things it talks about is meaningful choices. And in this section, it talks about how different goals can lead to different sort of emotions, how you can create emotions with these goals. One of these ways to create the emotion with the goals is through the consequences of the player's actions, stating how when the player does something, there has to be a consequence, some form that really gets players to think. For example, when you think about most action games, and there's that great running joke about Nathan Drake, where he's a lovable, carefree guy, but also a mass murderer. The amount of guys that you've killed as Nathan Drake, I don't need to go on this one any longer, you know it already. But it's about offering a consequence because of that, though. Maybe you see this actually affect Nathan in the way he talks when he approaches the bodies. Thinking about if there was a stealth element, because it wasn't until number 4 where they offered a limited stealth play to it, that it shows that this is having an impact, showing that stealth and knockout takedowns cause an effect on the character. These sort of consequences which create the emotional feeling and the thought of the player are the result of their actions. Another point with these goals is think about mechanically. What is your goal? Is it to kill someone, rescue someone, find X many objects, carry or escort a player partner? All these goals here mechanically have a different effect on the player emotionally. You know, you gunning down someone because that's your objective makes you feel strong and powerful when you carry it out, compared to safeguarding certain characters like that in Pigman. So the goals mechanically can help reflect an emotion that we are trying to create within the player. Putting emotion on the side, but with choices though, and it goes back to the Sid Meier quote, it is fantastic how choices bring us into the world of these games, making us think, just making us feel like we're in control of the situation. And even if our choices go wrong, we tried a stealthy route in a combat game, but we get spotted halfway through. These choices then deliver more choices, whether they go right or wrong, thinking about how you deal with the problem at hand. And it's especially brilliant when you have a game that offers you multiple choices to deal with the same puzzle. Like in the last episode, we spoke about Rhyme and how you get through these thorn bushes by either scaring a boar through the bushes or leading the boar through it by chucking in some food for the players to follow. Next, it talks about flow. As mentioned earlier in this episode, this one is a fantastic... Sorry, I got a fly around me then. This one is a fantastic thing that we all try follow in the games industry, is how to get the player into a state of flow. And this is giving you a breakdown. Now, it breaks down 8 requirements to get the player into the flow. So here they are. A challenging activity requiring skill, a merging of action and awareness, clear goals, direct, immediate feedback, concentration on the task at hand, a sense of control, a loss of self-consciousness, and an altered sense of time. Now, I don't want to break these points further down because, again, this is all in the book. But for me, flow is a fantastic thing that we're all trying to chase. And that's the hard part of finding, for example, the balance of a difficult challenge or puzzle that we give to the player. Because if we get that balance right, with it not being too hard and not being too easy, man, that's how one of the ways you gain players in the flow. But these 8 points that I've just mentioned then are fantastic and really make you think how you can achieve this. So this part is amazing, and it alone makes this part valuable of the book. If you want to know more about those points, then again, check out the book because it breaks it down. I don't want to give too much away on this right now because, like I said, I don't want to spoil the book for you. If you really want to know more about that flow, do purchase this book. Okay, team, now we're going on to the second chapter, which is about emotion with other players and cooperative emotion. And one of the first examples it gives is Little Big Planet, which is Media Molecule's, I believe, their first game, and it's a big franchise of theirs. I think in total, man, it must be about 5 games, maybe 6, including the race karting. And it talks about cooperation and cooperative solving in terms of puzzles. Now, if you haven't played Little Big Planet, you can play it 1 player to 4 players, and that can be couch playing or playing with friends online. So you have the main path that you go on through the levels quite happily, but you also have these side objectives which requires X players, 2, 3 or 4, all these different puzzles there. And so if you have other players with you, you can go do these puzzles. And it uses here in the example of the book how having these players requires you guys to work as a team to solve the puzzles, so it creates a bond, builds up a connection because you cannot complete this without them. All these players play a vital role in solving the puzzle, so you get connected and you find value within one another. It then moves on to talk about the expression of players and how we express ourselves through a game socially. Think about how you dress. Some people don't care about fashion, other people it's their lives, but how we dress is an expression. There's that thing we do as humans where we make our first impression or we judge someone within the first 60 seconds, and part of that is based on their looks, through their clothes, how they look physically. And it goes on to saying this within games such as Little Big Planet and City of Heroes, and how this expresses you as a person and how that can help build community and camaraderie through expressing yourself in this. It then goes on to touch about a game which is really interesting. I don't want to give too much away because I want you to read the book. It talks about how this game was taken and put in a march and how that brought players together. So I think that's really cool. The one thing it kind of touches on but doesn't enough is cooperative play and emotion with competitive play. So especially in the time period we are now, with esports becoming larger and constantly growing, and these competitive games, how they could bring teams together. I mean, if you look at people now playing Overwatch or League of Legends, Dota, the list goes on, how a team of 5 or 6 players comes together and they're, very close. It's all about the team gelling well to win, but yet at the same time, it's their tribe or team against another one. So I would have loved to have seen this in the book on chapter 2, discussing the psychology behind that, how you build teamwork within competitive play, as well as competing with others. Does this help forge a greater bond, or does it break players up? Because if you haven't seen, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty funny, but check out these tournament pro players getting angry at their opponents. Yeah, I laugh at it. You might not find it funny, but I did.
But my humour aside, it'd be very interesting to see, is there a way to reduce that animosity and anger towards the opposition and their own team? Or because of the competitive nature, will we always feel that animosity towards our opponents.
So this is what it talks about. Like I said, I think it's really cool. It uses some games that I'd forgotten about with Little Big Planet and especially City of Heroes, talking about their forum and their community and how big MMOs build a community around a game. So that's a very interesting one. I think I would have liked to have seen more from competitive side, but it's a good one nonetheless, this chapter. So now we are on to the third chapter, Bodies at Play, using movement design to create emotion and connection. So this chapter is about, well, it's breaking down body language, and I don't know how much psychology you listeners have done before, but there's certain stances which make people seem stronger, weaker, more intimidating, less intimidating. An example, if you think about it in cinematography terms, normally when there's a big, strong villain, the camera is pointing up towards them, making them look even bigger, filling up the screen, making them seem a more larger-than-life character and very intimidating. To make a character feel weak, the camera often looks down on the player, not the player, but the person who is looking weak, to again make them feel smaller, to make us look down on them, thinking that we don't really care much for them. So it breaks this down more about movements, power poses, facial expressions, and all this. And during the time when this book came out, it's discussing about Wii Remote, Kinect, PlayStation Move. But what I think is really good and really smart right now, though, with this, is how relevant this section now is with the movement of VR and the motion controllers within VR. Because the Wii was cool, Kinect not so much, PlayStation Move even worse, but it's now more relevant now that we have VR games. And it talks about poses that player pulls with these controllers and how they can be used, again, to make us feel more emotions. It also talks about how there's this is crazy to me as a guy who's done martial arts and enjoys fighting. Getting hit in the face is not the best way to pass the time, but what players have done in Street Fighter and other combat game tournaments is they've attached a shocker to their body, so each time their character receives damage, then they will receive an electric shock, giving them pain. So, yeah, an interesting one, but again, showing how a reaction in the body in a character and having it with yourself can cause a bond here. It also goes into different controller setups, such as an example of when you have racing games, you see controllers with the steering wheel and with the pedals for acceleration, brake, and changing the clutch. So again, having these controllers mimic our real life movements, motions, and actions to bring us closer into the game and feel more like we're in reality than in a virtual world. These are really cool, but I think these are also really extreme examples. Now, it doesn't mention anything like with a traditional controller really, such as, I think a great example is, well, I got two. One would be Skate. If you haven't played Skate, just watch some videos and see the tutorials and how you use the right stick to flick up to do an ollie or a kickflip, and how moving the analog stick in certain directions can cause different tricks, which at the time was revolutionary compared to Tony Hawk's, and also another game which is, well, it's Heavy Rain, but if you play any of David Cage's games, they all have a unique control scheme, something that tries to capture the movement and the actual day-to-day interaction that we do. For example, to have a drink, you push up on the right analog stick to mimic lifting your arm up compared to just pressing a button. So it gives some really cool examples, but they're a bit more extreme. But I do believe it can help you think with controls and the layout of them, and how mimic and use them to match real life motions. So that's one thing to think about with it. Again, really interesting, and these really amazing, crazy ideas that people have used with untraditional controllers, which again just makes you think what you can do with a traditional controller.
And now we come to the final chapter, bringing distance to create intimacy and connection. So this is, to me, just from my point of view, one of the best chapters. I have made a multiplayer game before called The Division, but the way that this book talks about connection and intimacy through its examples is fantastic. And just because it gets your brain thinking, something you may not have been aware of, how they use the distance to their benefit. And like I said, multiplayer games online are huge. They're great. So the first example though it kicks off with though is Words with Friends. Now, you might not know this game, you might not remember it, but it was kind of like Scrabble on your mobile devices, but you'd play with your friends online. So you get a notification when they'd place down their word. And at the time, I don't know what its numbers are now, but at the time it was really, it was a fantastic one. I didn't play it that often. It's not my cup of tea, but I saw so many of my friends enjoying it with family members. My family members enjoying it with their friends, because it's something light. You can take as long as you, I can't remember if there was a time limit on it, but I think there was. You could take as long as you want because you never knew when you were going to get it. But I thought it was amazing how you chose when to play. It wasn't just, we both need to be online at the same time to do this. You responded when you wanted, and that connection would always be there. So this, was such an interesting example, and it breaks it down much more thorough than what I've said. But again, don't want to go into too much detail, and I'm sorry for repeating that line about 20 times throughout this podcast. So it next goes into games like Animal Crossing, where you can go interact with other NPCs, but also you can go chat with friends online. Which got me thinking about other recent mobile games, such as the Simpsons mobile app, where you built Springfield, and how you could go visit your friends and check out their vision of Springfield, get rewards for going to see them, giving them gifts, and it's that sort of interaction where you get to see what your friends are doing, it inspires your creativity, and you interact with them through just seeing what they've done, communication through essentially pictures in a way, which, is in a very interesting and also smart and simplified way of communicating. By us expressing ourselves how we want, we still create a conversation with people who come visit our visions of Springfield or the town. And then it gives its final example, well, not its final example, but the final example I'm going to touch on, which is Journey. This was fantastic because you never knew when you were going to bump into another player, and you couldn't communicate with them extensively. All you had was one button, and it made a chirping noise. If you held it down for longer, it'd be a longer noise, and you could press it as much as you wanted. But then you'd move through the world with them, or you may get separated. So I'm going to tell you a story that I heard about the game, because this is a fantastic story and just showing the power of this game. I got to meet the composer of Journey, Austin Wintory. Again, apologies if I missaid your name then. And he told me how the team received a letter from a man who'd recently lost his father, and while playing Journey, he met another player, and again they couldn't communicate, but they made it all the way through the game together. And he said that helped him accept the sad loss of his father. And I just thought that was so amazing and so powerful. By taking away words, it brought a stronger connection. And yeah, like I said, this chapter is very, very interesting, very strong to me, because it's not something we always talk about. Within MMOs and MOBAs, we have communication, but it's a different type of emotion thereafter. Yet this bringing us together in a way to solve puzzles or work together as a team to progress through the game is a brilliant one. So, as I'm recording this, E3 2017 has just wrapped up, and a game I think is really going to work well in this sort of context is a game called A Way Out. So, by the creators of Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. So, I'm super excited to see how that works. So, guys, that brings us to the end of my talk about the book. So, the book again is called How Games Move Us, Emotion by Design. I'm going to have a link in the description so you can click that and you can go purchase the book from the link there. Again, it's a light read, but again, it opens your mind to focus more on the emotion. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and hope you've enjoyed the third episode with me, your host, Max Pears, bringing you that, you know it, smooth jazz. So, thanks again. If you have any reading material that you want to suggest to me, please tweet at me at Max Pears. If you like what you heard here and want to support me to continue to make these podcasts, then please subscribe. I want this to grow. I want you to share it with as many people so we can start building a community and start helping each other out. Yeah, I guess that's me wrapping it up now. If you want to see more of my work, please go to maxpears.com. So, take care, and I hope you're having a lovely day, evening, or night time, whenever you're listening to this, and keep playing or making the games that you love. Take care, guys. See you later.